Hi, my name is Johnny Kuhn and I work for a group called the Center of Excellence in Hitachi Vantara. We perform demos and proof of concepts for customers on Hitachi solution. And today I'm going to give you a demo on Automation Director, Hitachi Automation Director, and some of the integration possibilities. First, I want to just give you a brief overview of what my environment looks like. We are performing all the tests on a stretched metro cluster, which is running on GAD, Global Active Device. I have got 3 data centers, and in each data center I have got a storage array. In my DC1 I've got a G1500 with a GAD setup to the DC3 G1500 array. Then in my DC2 I've got a G200 which acts as the quorum, and as well as a G400 which is the 3 data center setup and also serves as a NAS module. Then a set of switches with your typical Fabric A and Fabric B, and then a bunch of compute between the two sites. I have a Lua metro cluster, a vSphere Lua metro cluster, and as well as a stock standard metro cluster. All the VMs that we'll be using today are housed in both the Lua and the normal non-Lua stretched metro cluster. Logging into my vCenter server. Here we can now see the Lua cluster with the 2 nodes, this node in the DC1, this node in the DC3, and then the normal GAD cluster, the non-Lua cluster, this node in the DC1 and this node in the DC3. In the resource pool, the GAD Lua resource pool, my Automation Director server is part of my Command Suite server installation. So it's running as a virtual machine. I'm now logging in as a system user. From the system user login, you have a dashboard that shows you an overview of all your service templates that were executed, the frequency, how often, and the status of success and failed. There's also a guidance menu that you can use to navigate should you not be that familiar with the platform. In the administration tab, you'll find the connection settings, and this is where we configure what Automation Director can connect to. The connection settings are important because Automation Director needs to talk to the different elements in your environment to be able to perform the automation or be able to fetch information to pass to maybe another application to perform automation. The web services connections, out of the box, these are pre-canned and configured. What Automation Director support is Device Manager, vCenter, Brocade Network Advisor. This is the storage CM REST server, Cisco's Data Center Network Manager, any SMIS provider, as well as we have configured in here Hitachi Data Instance Director, which is our Enterprise Data Copy Management Suite, and our analytics platform, which is HIAA, Hitachi Infrastructure Analytics Advisor. There are many more web services connections that you can configure. Basically any sort of platform that supports REST or SMIS you can configure in here, so any third-party devices are also supported. Then under the agentless remote connection settings, this is where you can configure connections into hosts that either have an SSH server or that run terminal service. So both Linux, Unix and Windows are supported, as well as if you have got a device which is maybe running VxWorks like a Nortel switch, a Cisco switch, a Brocade switch. That can also be configured in the agentless remote connection settings so that we are able to either perform a function or give an instruction or collect information. All these service templates, which is basically a golden workflow of specific tasks, they consume storage, and the storage they consume are based on profiles. The system comes with these default profiles, bronze, gold, silver, etc. You can, if this is not to your desire, you can delete all of these profiles and you can create your own profiles if you rather prefer maybe more profiles based on I/O characteristics like 8 million I/Os, 4 million I/Os to 1 million I/Os or mass capacity. That's completely up to you how you can consume the storage and how you can configure the profiles. The idea with being able to consume the storage via profiles is that you can almost create a software-defined storage network for your front-end user so that he is completely unaware as to what storage vendor or even what array he's consuming this from, that he just can see the profile and consume the arrays. We've got quite in-depth role-based access control where we have users. The users have got permissions, and even in those permissions then they have different groups. After this I'll show a short demo of what a self-service portal looks like, but the idea with the quite in-depth role-based access control is to be able to give your business units, so your VMware or your database like Oracle or SQL, all those business units, that you can give them access into Automation Director, that they can consume the service templates themselves, and also maybe have a distinction between operators and managers, where the managers for those users can have more admin roles on the service templates. So what that means is they are able to then manipulate some of the input properties to adhere to maybe to certain standards. Then we have a concept of infrastructure groups. In my case, I'm just using the default one, but an infrastructure group is basically the web services connection, the agentless remote connections, and then a service group. So a service group is a group of service templates. So these three things together, that is what makes up an infrastructure group. And then here is the service group, which we already have discussed. So besides your normal HAD users and permissions as well, we also support LDAP. So this could be your Microsoft Active Directory or a Linux-based Active Directory. So service templates. Service templates, like what we briefly discussed before, is the golden image of a specific workflow. So Automation Director comes with a bunch of service templates. So this is what distinguishes us from our competition, that we do not just provide you with a framework, we also give you enormous amount of content that you can use or reuse or manipulate to create your own service templates. Each service template and the components within the service template can be customized. That is why you'll see a version and a date at the bottom of each of the service templates. You will also find that there's a version up or a outdated button as well. Then this will show you if the service template itself, if there's a newer version available within the framework for you to update, or if the components that are included within the service template, if there's a newer version that's available. On a quarterly basis, Hitachi releases a new version of Automation Director. This is not necessarily for an update on the framework. This could be only to add or to provide the customers with additional service templates. These service templates can be individually imported and can also be shared by right-clicking and executing the export. We have a community page called community.hitachivantara.com, where if you need any help or assistance, that is the place to go if you do not have a support contract. Also, the community page is monitored by the engineering team, and they assist customers with any sort of customizations that they require. If they find that there are frequent requested help in specific areas, so for an example, we had a couple of customers requesting assistance with integration with ServiceNow, and then a couple of releases later, ServiceNow was introduced into Automation Director as one of the default plugins. So a lot of content is available on there where other customers and partners share service templates with one another. Then a service template is just like what we've mentioned in the beginning, a golden copy. But when the end user actually consumes these workflows, these service templates, they actually consume services. And a service is an instance of a service template. So to give a very layman's explanation for that is, let's say we're looking at the allocate storage service template. If you create a service of that service template, obviously that service template has got a couple of input properties that is required for allocating the storage. So it could be the pool on the array, or maybe the front-end ports where it should allocate this LDEVs to. And what you can do by these services is you can say, I'm creating this allocate storage service, but this is for my Oracle database, and I know my Oracle database, they need a stellar performance, so I'm going to already predefine the input property for the pool to use pool 0, which is, let's say, the flash pool, and I know the ports are port, let's say, 1A, 2A, -1 and -2, so that you can take those input properties and already predefine them for that user. Then maybe for the DB2 group, you can create the same. You can create another service from the same service template, and then maybe select a different pool, and obviously then different ports as well. So in the end, that you'll have the two services that are actually using the same service template. And if you need to make any changes, you just upgrade the service template or change the service template, and those changes are then pushed through to the services that you've created. But that's also if you choose to do so. You can have maybe the Oracle service that is running a slightly different version than the DB2 service. So we also have a task where you can view all the tasks that have ran. From here you can see what are the input properties that the user have used, and as well as get a detailed log. And this is available to all the users that have the rights to see the specific tasks. So if a business unit user is executing something, then everybody in his group can see, hey, this user is busy executing under the task section as well. Then for fail task, you have the ability to retry the task, but retry the task then from either the failed step or from the step after the failed step. So you do not need to go through a massive undo procedure to undo whatever the service template has performed. You can just execute from where the last task has failed. So let's jump into a small demo now. So here I'm going to show you what a self-service portal could possibly look like. So I'm logging here in as my VMware app operator, and as you can see, he already has he's got fewer options available to him. So this VMware user has the ability to only create a GAD volume and provision a VMware data store, as well as to expand it. Those are the two services that are available to him. And when he executes this task, these are the input properties that he can see, so he can choose the capacity. So let's log out as this user, and let's log in with maybe the business owner of that group, let's say the VMware admin user. As you can see, he's got a few, he's got the service template, so he's got a little bit more options available to him, and as well as he has edit access onto the service templates. So like what we mentioned before, if you provide admin access to the users, they are able to change or manipulate the input properties. So let's say this user says, you know what, I want my user LDEVs to start on 2040, and I want this to be a read-only field, and my default option for the GAD pair should be 500 gigs. So if the VMware operator then logs in, and he executes a service, those changes will reflect immediately in the service that were done by the administrator. So you can now submit, and now we can view the progress of this task. So what this service template does is it creates a GAD volume for a cluster for this VMware user, and this is specific to this GAD cluster that we have here. So the user required another GAD volume. Normally this is a task done by the storage administrator, but in this case, because we can automate this using Automation Director, we can provide it to the business users, in this case the VMware user, but I mean this could be extended to, let's say, the Oracle user or the SAP users, so that they are able to perform more complex storage tasks within a controlled environment. So this service template consists out of a couple of flow plugins. So this first flow plugin gets the LUN ID alignment correct between the storage arrays. That's a requirement from VMware for a metro cluster. Then what it does is it creates a volume on both storage arrays, the DC1 and the DC3 arrays, that if you recall from the PowerPoint presentation in the beginning. Then it goes through a setup on the storage array to configure the GAD volume. And then after that, it then creates a replication group, which we call a copy group. And this is a copy group specifically for GAD because we want active configuration. Then the next flow plugin consists basically performs the VMware configuration. So the first one rescans the ESX nodes so that it is able to pick up this new volume, this GAD volume, and then it creates a data store on this new volume. So that's the job of these three plugins. Then at the end, it ends up with an email notification to say that this job has been completed or this job has failed, and then it provides the details for the data store that was created. So this is a very basic service template with very few input properties. And as we go to the next demo, we will look at service templates with a lot more input properties and which are a lot more involved. But you as a system user can dictate when my user executes these service templates, are they going to be very basic or are they going to be more involved? So you choose what input properties do you want to set as default values, or which ones you want your users to actually have the ability to choose what they want those input properties to be. So while we wait for this, let's continue on to the next demo. So for this demo, we will again look at on the VMware environment, and we have this demo cluster with a single node demo ESX. And as you can see, it only has a local data store. So the service template that we will be executing is going to do the zoning for this node. It will then connect into the storage array, do the host groups, the LUN masking and the LUN assignment, and then it will connect to vCenter to create the data store. So this is normally a job that where 3 or 4 different groups are involved. So first the VMware group, they normally install the ESX software onto the nodes. Then they pass the roll over to the SAN group, where they will do the zoning for the node worldwide numbers and the ports on the storage array. After that, it's passed to the SAN group, and they will then perform the host groups creation, the LUN masking, and then the LDEV creations. It will then be passed back to the VMware group so that they can rescan the nodes to pick up the new volumes and then create the data store on there. So we have a service template that basically allows in this case, the VMware user to be able to perform most of these functions themselves. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute this task as the system user. There we can see our REST, CM REST, GAD provisioning and data store creation service template that's just completed. And there we got our email to say that this is the data store that's been created. There was the path, there is the volume and the LDEV IDs. So if we go to our VMware cluster, there is the 2040 that we have just witnessed being created. So let's look at this allocate fabric aware volumes and create data store for ESX service. And I'm going to just expand this. We can see everything. And like I mentioned, this will show us all the possible input properties because I'm executing this as the system user, and I have not created a service where I have set specific default values. But if you want your user not to have all this available options, then what you can do is you can create a service of the service template, and then you can add all of these as default properties, and maybe just ask them, that they are able to select the cluster, and maybe say, select the capacity and give the data store name. So first we select our vCenter, and then via the vCenter API, it pulls a list of all my clusters, and this is the demo cluster with the demo user. Then next we go to the target storage input properties. Here we select our configuration manager and then select our array, and this array, the 58990, is the array in our DC1 data center. Then we scroll down and we select the resource group, and like I mentioned, if you do not want your users to be able to see this or be involved in any of these sort of choices, then you can set these as default and hide them from the user. So when he executes, he doesn't see any of these. So moving over to the resource criteria input property groups, as you can see, this is marked in blue, so it's not compulsory. So this is where you select the ports. And because it's not compulsory, that means that the service template will then look at the usage on the ports and then choose the ports that are less used. Volume settings is compulsory, so here we choose the volume that we want to assign to it. In my case, let's say a single volume, and the volume ID should be, let's make it the next preceding one. 500 gigs is fine. We choose this pool, and we can maybe give it a label to say demo, and maybe lunch starts at 40 or 30. So, and as you can see, they already had default value. So if that value already exists, the system will just look at the next available one. So we go to the host group information. Again, you can see it's not compulsory. So here you can dictate what the name of the host group should be from the storage point of view. If you do not specify anything here, it will use the name that it finds in the vCenter configuration. The same for the fabric configuration. We select the BNA server, and it will go and scan through all the switches on the BNA server to find the switches with the worldwide numbers for the host and the worldwide numbers for the ports to perform the zoning. The next part is the zone settings. As you can see, it's also not compulsory. So if let's say you, for your business unit, you want to add the prefix of that organization name into the zoning configuration, so that if the SAN group looks at the zoning information, they can quite easily see which group created which zones. Again, this is not compulsory, and you can hide this completely from the user executing the service template. So then the data store, that would give it a name, and let's call it demo. And as we can see now, after this, there should be all the compulsory input properties. So let's submit and view the task. So what it's doing now, it's taking all the input properties and it's passing them as variables or as properties then to the service template. And as you can see, this service template is more involved than the previous service template that we've executed. So the service template is actually quite quick. It's got a bunch of plugins that it executes. And as we can see, it executed it only in a couple of minutes. So now if we go to our VMware cluster, we are able to see that there is the new data store that it was just created. So in both demos that we just looked at, Automation Director, by using the REST API, connected into vCenter, into Brocade Network Advisor, into the CMREST server to perform some sort of function. Automation Director also has a REST API. So that means that from another application, so it could be our IT analytics suite called HIAA, or let's say whatever ITSM product, or any other application that you have that supports outgoing REST calls, can be then used to call a specific service template in Automation Director.